Welcome to Popternative, where we dive into topical discussions from the worlds of pop culture, social media, and sports. Here is your host, Peter Remoliotis, aka PD Beats.
Hello and welcome to the Popternative podcast here on Blab. I'm your host, Peter Remoliotis, and on Twitter I go as PD Beats. We have a really cool episode for you guys tonight. We have a special, I call it Ask and Answer episode rather than Q&A, because on Popternative we want to be fresh and hip and new, come up with different titles. So we have three guests from the social media sports world that work and manage social media for really incredible brands. So we're really excited to have them on, and we're going to discuss and answer all the questions that you guys have given us over the past couple of days. So I'm just going to quickly introduce the panel. First, we have the director of social media for Foot Locker. We have Ben Dignan. Ben, welcome.
What's up, everybody?
We have digital media producer and social media lead for the NHLPA. We have Faas. Catherine, welcome.
Hi, thank you.
And we have social media manager for the Harlem Globetrotters. We have Brian Penter. Brian, welcome to the show.
Hey guys, live from Atlanta. Excited to get started.
Perfect. So, opening remarks. So, Catherine, just tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bio.
So I'm Catherine. I'm the digital content producer and social media lead for the NHL Players Association. In April, it'll be 4 years of having that position there. Prior to that, I worked at CBC on the George Stroumboulopoulos Tonight Show, and I was the interactive producer and social media lead there as well. So kind of took a leap into sports, and I've been loving it ever since.
Perfect. Brian, what about you?
I am the new social media manager for the Harlem Globetrotters, which is actually located in Atlanta, not Harlem, because I get that question a lot. I'm still pretty new here. I'm only about 2 months in. Prior to coming over to the Globetrotters, I was with Turner Sports in Atlanta, where I was on a team that did NBA on TNT, NBA TV, NCAA March Madness, and PGA.com. Helping manage all their social properties. So that's a little bit about my background.
Great. And Ben, what about you?
Very nice. I'm from NYC tonight. I'm currently at Foot Locker Inc., handling leading up social media for basically our brand and our family of brands. So we have Foot Locker, Foot Action, Kids Foot Locker, 602, Lady. Those are our core businesses. So kind of managing the teams that run social for each of those platforms. And I've been there about 6 months. Prior to that, I was at Showtime Sports, heading up and leading their social media for their boxing mostly, and then our sports shows. So that was Inside the NFL, 60 Minutes Sports, and documentaries and that sort of thing. So been working in sports for about 7 years and never want to work in anything else.
Great. Well, I'm happy to have all three of you on the show. I understand you all are very busy, so it means a lot for you guys to take some time out of your schedule and come on the show. I know, Catherine, you're leaving. Are the plans still that you have to leave tomorrow, right, for Nashville? Oh, I think we lost
her audio.
her audio.
Oh, is it working now?
Oh, we got it back.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I'm leaving at 6 a.m. for Nashville for All-Star, so I'm excited about that.
Oh,
ooh, nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, no, I thank you all for being on. So yeah, social media sports it's a fresh new field. There's a lot of interest in it. A lot of people are studying it. A lot of people have studied it, including myself. And, there's a lot of stuff going on social media specifically for it. There's SM Sports Chats, on Thursday. And I just thought it would be cool, to have a conversation with you guys who, do this for a living and, work in social media sports. And we had some really cool questions that we're going to talk about and answer, and it's going to be it's going to make for a cool discussion. So the first thing that I want to talk about too is, there's a lot of social media platforms, a lot of new ones coming out. There's a lot of them, but the big three that everyone thinks of are Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Those are, I think we can all agree that those are the main three. Snapchat and all the others are, making their ways, making the rounds. But I think that a question I wanted to ask is, what is your opinion about creating content for all these platforms that are different among each other? So it's not just, the same posts going on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, right? These are separate platforms. So don't you think there should be an importance of, at times, creating content for each platform that's a lot different? So stuff that you're only going to be able to see, Ben, on the Foot Locker's Instagram, or Brian, stuff that you're only going to be able to see on the Twitter account for Harlem Globetrotters. You'll find other stuff on the other platforms, and Catherine with the NHLPA only Facebook stuff. So what do you guys think about that? Does anyone want to take that first? Or?
I'll jump in.
Yeah.
So I think there's some crossover, and then some things that live individually on each channel. I mean, in an ideal world, we could have 100%, and maybe you guys do, but have 100% tailored strategy and different content for every platform. But the reality is, with resources and with time, it's sort of and the fact is, some content plays well on all channels. I mean, if I put up an image on Instagram, it might also do really well on Twitter. Am I gonna pick one over the other? Maybe, maybe not. So what we try to do at Foot Locker is kind of have a little bit of a niche strategy for each, and then spread some content among like maybe two of the three. For example, Facebook, for us, we've seen the organic reach drop so much that we don't even have much of a mindset around a strategy for Facebook now unless it's paid. So if we have money to throw behind a video or a campaign, that sort of thing, we do that. But for the most part, our daily goals are Instagram and Twitter, growing those communities. And the basic difference for us on a content strategy would be Twitter. We try to do a lot more conversational, a lot more stuff live during the evening around NBA games, because that's where our consumers at. Polls, things of that nature. And then Instagram is basically, we stick to the beautiful imagery. I mean, people obviously follow us for the product, so it's mostly sneaker posts and that sort of thing. So that's kind of how I see it.
Yeah, Catherine, what about you? What do you think about that?
I agree. I think it's always a good strategy to not go into that thinking, oh, I've got a great picture here, I'm going to post it across the board. I think everybody is a little bit different. Every office is different. Your resources are different. So it's about finding something that works for you in terms of balance. For us, we pay a lot of attention to how our audience absorbs all of the content we put out there. So for us, Facebook is kind of like, for photos, the best of the best, because people expect a lot of quality, but that also goes for Instagram as well. We pay more attention to aesthetically pleasing things for those two platforms. Twitter is more about being instant, being a little bit more clever with our captions and imagery. I think people like to joke around a little bit more, I find. And then everything else, we experiment with the things that we don't have time to do all of, every day. So Vine, Periscope, all that stuff. We definitely use that more around live events and focus on producing content, on location, like we will be doing for All-Star Weekend. We'll pay attention to making more strategy around that, but we don't necessarily use it every day. So it's about, finding a balance, finding the amount of resources you can dedicate to something, and then just doing it the best you can. And you don't have to be everywhere. You just have to be the places you can do things the best you can.
No, that's a good point. Brian, you haven't been with the Globetrotters for that long, but your work with Turner Sports. What do you think about some of the points that Ben and Catherine raised?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely different strengths and weaknesses with each platform. With Twitter, you can pretty much tweet as often as you want because the feed stays fresh so long. So I'll pretty much use most of the content we get on Twitter because 15 minutes later, people aren't going to see it. With Facebook, like Ben said, the organic reach is just dropping so much that, the content that I see still doing well on Facebook is video. So I almost use Facebook exclusively as a video platform. Every now and then I'll share a link or maybe a high quality photo, but Facebook, I really just stick to maybe the two best videos I get each day. And then Instagram is kind of in between both. You can post a little more I'll try to do 4 to 5 Instagram posts per day with high quality images from our games, short videos if I can get my hands on them. So that's kind of how I treat each of those platforms.
Yeah, no, I think you all brought up really good points. This was kind of like an icebreaker. Like a lot of like the next question is going to be a lot more back and forth. But I was just curious about this myself, because it's something that you see and it also depends on your style too and the person running the accounts, right? A lot of people, will use it. Like you all brought up, that you agreed about it, but you all had kind of different ways of how you scheduled and created the posts. So I find that really interesting. And like I said quickly on the show, a lot of people are studying, social media sports, studying communication, sports management. So one question we had was, what are the biggest obstacles and opportunities facing social media and sports pros and students entering the field? And, these obstacles, how could these obstacles be addressed? So what do you think? Are there any obstacles in terms of, like you said, try to find content, Ben, like you said, sometimes, there's not much content for certain platforms. What do you think some of the obstacles are?
Well, for students trying to get into the field, I'd say some of the biggest obstacles are obviously sports is a really highly coveted job. That's why the leagues can afford to pay so little. That's why we work 7 days a week. I mean, that's this is obviously the industry that people really want to be in. So it's got to be your passion. I mean, you've got to really want it. You've got to do a ton of internships. I mean, it's really about kind of just taking whatever you can get for a while until you kind of build up enough esteem on your resume to kind of get something a little bit better. And then another obstacle, I think, is that people think because they're a sports fan or because they're on Twitter on their personal lives that they can do it for a career. And as we all know, that's a big difference between being on Twitter for fun, which, I mean, I don't use my Twitter to sell anything. I'm basically just typing my own nonsense, versus using Twitter to convert fans to purchase, which is, I mean, that's really the crux of our job at Foot Locker. Whereas someone like Brian's probably using it as a mix of like selling tickets and just trying to keep the fan community updated. And Catherine might be using it for another purpose. But I think those are some of the biggest challenges from a student perspective.
Yeah, no, Catherine, like with the NHLPA, there's obviously, what you're doing is you're essentially promoting the players, right? That's basically what you're doing. So it's a little different to what Ben said. You're promoting players, like, can you talk about that a little bit too?
That's exactly right. We're not, we work in conjunction with the league, but the league definitely focuses more on the team aspect of hockey, and we're definitely focusing on the players and highlighting their personalities on and off the ice, because they're involved in a lot of things aside from hockey too that are just as important. So, I guess that would be probably one of the biggest obstacles, like in my job, is how do you calculate success and measure success when you don't have, the typical type of conversion you're measuring, because we're not necessarily selling anything. We're raising awareness. We're driving key messaging around different issues and players that we want to promote. So it's about, finding the formulas that work for you, being able to measure success in a way that makes sense for your goals, and helping your office and your executives above you understand what you're trying to do. And that can definitely be tricky. And I imagine that's different for no matter where you're working, even if your metric is sales, your strategy is going to be different. So it's, finding where you fit in and doing that well. And it's tricky. It's different everywhere you go. I've been working in social media for about 7 years now, and it's still sometimes, I don't know. Like, you have to brainstorm every day, and it's always changing. So you have to keep adapting.
7 years. Wow.
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out, Kat, for like the first year you were doing it. There must have been like a lot of limitations. Like it's grown so much over the years, right?
Yeah.
MySpace.
Yeah, MySpace.
Well, it started out like when you start out as a digital producer, it originally was like, I'm uploading video and we're doing this. It's mostly just website maintenance, and then it's grown into this entire other entity. So yeah, it's been quite a transformation.
Brian, what do you think about some of these obstacles? And another thing too about the Harlem Globetrotters is they're playing a game like almost every day, right? So for you specifically, that's like a lot of do you find sometimes there's like a pressure to make sure that there's enough content created, because they're always, there's like almost no breaks. We saw it on their Twitter takeover. They were talking about how they're always playing, right?
Yeah, so we actually have 3 teams that are all touring right now. So we have 3 teams playing every day, and sometimes twice a day they'll play an afternoon and a night game. So we might have 4 to 5 games a day. Obviously, it's not the same as an NBA team, but because it's more of an entertainment show, it's kind of a blend of both. For my content, I honestly rely a lot on user-generated stuff, people taking video from games, stuff from our players. That's one great thing. Our players do a really good job posting their own funny snippets to social media. So that's great because I'm not out there on the road every night with those guys. I don't have a snappy TV type resource like I used to at Turner where we could get tons of highlights and photos and clips like that. So I have to be a little more creative at times with content and content creation because it is just me. I'm a manager of one person, which is myself. So that's kind of my content strategy. And I wanted to go off what Ben was saying too, as far as students and people looking to get into the industry is it's extremely competitive. I've been working in sports since I graduated from college. And I can tell you, before I got the Globetrotters job, there's another job I really wanted, and I came down to the end. Ultimately didn't get it, but they told me there was over 1,000 applicants for that one job. So the amount of competition in this field, because the jobs are so great and it's such a great career, it's very stiff. So you got to find a way to separate yourself and show that you can be better than those other 999 people.
Just to add to your point, Brian, I think making yourself available early and just having the confidence to speak to as many people, go to as many networking events as you can, because that old cliche, like it is who you know, putting yourself out there when you have speakers at your school, when you have panel discussions nearby, go to those things, ask questions, introduce yourself, be confident, and that can go a really long way. I know a speaker that came to Laurier University where I did journalism, that ended up being the first person that hired me out of school. So it really is important to introduce yourself to everybody that you can and make yourself available. Do internships while you're in school. Don't wait to graduate to start working, and just get yourself out there.
And there's to go off what Catherine said, I mean, when you're 21, 22 years old, there's no downside. You can spend 12 hours on Twitter.
Yeah.
Every single person in the industry. And if one person writes you back, then awesome. One person wrote you back. And then you say, hey, can I take you to coffee? Can I work for you for free? And then it's hard to turn down a free body. So they'll be like, sure. And then you show that you bring value. And then all of a sudden, a freelance job comes available or a part-time job, and you're there. And that's how you sort of make your mark. But yeah, I mean, there's nothing too small when you're 18, 19, 20 to do.
No, I think Catherine, you said it perfectly. The networking aspect is really important. It's something that, I love using Twitter to network and meet many different people and keeping in touch, right? I use lists on Twitter. I have, I put them private so people can't really see them, but I have lists that, are really specific in terms of categories, and it allows me to keep up and network. And no, it's really interesting, and it is competitive, but hard work pays off down the road. And you said it yourself, we had Pat Donahue from the LA Kings on the show before the new year, and he was talking about they'll literally get, like, when they post something, whether it's an intern at the LA Kings, they'll get like 700. One time they had 700 resumes in 2 days, like just pouring in,
Wow.
Out of those 700, how many are, qualified? I don't know, but 700 to go through, So I agree with that. And we had my friend Richard Bew, actually, you guys were talking to him on the chat here, but he brought something up about Twitter, about the 140 characters. I think we need to talk about that because I find that's really interesting. What do you think about all that whole there's talk about them changing that, because there's a lot of changes happening with Twitter coming. We had Chris Doyle on the show a couple of weeks ago too. Do you think that Twitter is like, do you like that whole like 140 characters, like the short and sweet, or do you think you'd at least want like 250? Like, what do you think about that?
I hate to jump in. Every time. But I'm
you're excited.
I'm passionate about this. I feel like 140 is the thing that makes it unique. It's the thing that makes me like it. I mean, I like Twitter the most. I like to scroll my Instagram to look at images, but I'm on Twitter all day. I'm on Facebook rarely. The whole sports stadium thing that they just launched, like, we'll see how that goes, and they have this scale for sure. But Twitter's the place to watch live sports and follow along. But in terms of the character count, I think they could take a little baby step, like maybe 240, 300 would be cool.
Yeah.
10,000, not cool. Like, it's not Tumblr.
What will it look like too? Like, it will it kind of, I'm sure it will have like the read more little, like if it's a really long tweet, it will like to expand tweet. Like, I just can't imagine what it's going to look like.
I was talking with the Twitter reps at CES this year in Vegas, and when we went into our meeting with them, that was the first thing we complained about, was the future of the 10,000 characters. And that's what I think it's going to look like. It's going to be like an expand button, which if that's the case, then I don't really think it'll change things. People can do what they want. They can post a little, they can post a lot, and you'll only see a small snippet. So in that case, I don't think it'll be that bad, but we'll see.
But they're not going to be tweets anymore, Catherine and Brian. They're going to be like blog posts on Twitter.
Yeah, I agree with you, Ben. And I think that, I mean, the 140 characters is what forces you to be smart about the language you're using. And, like you talk about it in terms of it expanding, but what is that first line going to say? It's just going to be, it won't be as important or as concise or as clever as it would be in 140 characters, I imagine. And you mentioned it's the best companion thing to watch sports with. I mean, I love being able to read through 100 things on a commercial break or at a break in the play, and I can actually get through that much content. If it's longer, I might be able to read 10 or 15 things. So I just feel like I won't get as much. I'm going to have FOMO.
We had a question about FOMO too that we're going to get to later. But yeah, Brian, continue.
I like the around the horn scoring they have on here, where we each have like points. So I'm losing, it looks like right now.
They're called props.
There we go. I just got a prop. So as far as the Twitter goes, at least if they had more than Kanye would only have to send one tweet instead of 19 today. So maybe it could be a positive there. But
nice for you.
Yeah, there's some more props, but
Kanye.
Anyhow, I was just gonna say, I think if they expanded at all, I would only want it to see kind of that show more option, because the 140. I mean, when you say Twitter, that's the next thing that comes up, 140, and they've defined themselves so much by that. It's what makes it great. That's why I love Twitter. Twitter is definitely my favorite platform of all the social medias. So I hope they don't go too crazy. I know their stock prices are dropping, but I hope they choose something different to change things up.
10,000. Wow. I can't believe that. When I read that, I thought it was maybe just like a suggestion, but then I realized that it was, a statement that Twitter was talking about. So we'll see how it goes. But Cav, you mentioned FOMO, and someone actually, had a question about that, like specifically. It was actually Matthew Smith, who does social media for OSEG. He does like Ottawa Red Blacks, Ottawa 67s. He wanted to know about like our position in terms of brands and teams trying to join in every conversation. So what do you guys think about that? Ben, you're pumped every time. I love it. You're like one of the most passionate guests we've had on. It's awesome. You're like, wow.
You'd think I'm like a huge talker. I talk a fair bit, but not like, I'm not over the top. But I think in doses. I think you need to know your brand. You need to know your audience. There's a national something day every single day now, multiple. To jump in, like, it's just a little bit much. The other day was National Hug Day. Thought about it. Had a James Harden clip of him hugging a couple teachers when we filmed him at a school. made that into a GIF. It was perfect. It played well. Not getting in on every other day that there is, kind of picking and choosing and knowing your audience, I think is most important. And there's just a lot of brands out there that are jumping in conversations that are way out of their realm, and it gets to be a little much. So that's my short and sweet.
I think that if you're not able to manage it comfortably, you shouldn't be doing it. And I know we run into that at the NHLPA because, like you, Brian, I am a one-trick pony for, like, it's just me a lot of the time. So, you know, I'm not following along every single game at night trying to jump into every one of those conversations. We know our role in the hockey conversation is players, and we're not focusing on the games or the team aspect, but we're focusing on our guys. So those are the conversations that we stick to, and that's just knowing your brand and knowing your resources. So that has to fit into your strategy.
Yeah, and I agree with both of these guys. If you have a relevant thing to say based on that conversation, or you have a great piece of content, like with the hug thing, then yeah, go for it. And it's great to kind of insert yourself into those conversations. A lot of times it's low-hanging fruit that's easy to chime in on, but I do think it gets corny when brands and teams are posting on every single national day and joining every single conversation. So you got to kind of pick your spots and just know your brand, know your brand's voice, what makes sense for you in that regard. So don't jump into every single hashtag that's trending each day.
But I think the coolest, you know, Brian, I'm going to plug in your amazing tweet because, you know, that was like the greatest thing ever. The Golden State Warriors tweet you put out. So before I get into it, could you explain to us, do you guys, Catherine, Ben, do you know about that tweet? The Harlem Globetrotters. Okay, Brian, you got to talk about it because that was pretty amazing. And you also have to explain that it was like your first week there too.
Yeah, it was my first week on the job. It was actually one of the first tweets I sent after kind of taking things over. The Golden State Warriors were started the season undefeated and were obviously a huge topic, being the defending champs. And so I kind of thought, well, the Globetrotters are known for having these ridiculously long winning streaks, and it would be funny to kind of
I remember this.
poke fun at them in kind of a lighthearted way. I didn't want to start beef with the Warriors. So I said, like, congrats on the 24-game win streak. You're only 3,566 short of our current mark, which is actually true because we do keep our records. And so that's what our win streak was at the time. And it kind of just spread like wildfire. Some NBA journalists started retweeting it. The Warriors commented on it and said squad goals, which was like the perfect response. And once they kind of picked it up, it really just started to spread. SportsCenter, Bleacher Report, everyone was picking it up. So that was really cool to see. And I think that's a good example of something that it was a topic that was trending, but it was also kind of relevant to our brand, basketball, long winning streaks. And we did it in a fun and lighthearted way. So I think that's why that I didn't expect the tweet to get over 10,000 retweets like it did. But
yeah.
So that was definitely cool to see.
But I brought that up because, you know, that was something that you just like, you know, you didn't overthink. That wasn't like planned, you know, many days in advance. You kind of were probably just at your office, saw, you know, like all the tweets about the Warriors and just say, hey, you know, let's go for it. But that's the thing too, right, Catherine and Ben? It's like sometimes with my stuff, the QMJHL, my best posts were the ones that I just thought of like right away. And, you know, not like right away, like, but like just like on the spot and not like planned it, you know, because it depends what it is. But sometimes you can't plan a lot of interaction, right? It just happens.
Yeah, those are usually the best ones when it's just it just happens organically. And those moments, that's why it's so important to be, you know, have your phone with you at all times and keep looking, even if it's, you know, 9 a.m. on a Sunday morning or a Saturday morning. Like even just this past weekend with the blizzard that hit New York, there was a funny interview that I just happened to see where Ovechkin's filling up his gas tank at like in Washington, and they're like, why are you out? Like, aren't you like afraid of the snow? And he's like, no, we're from Russia. Like, why would I be afraid of this snowstorm? And that just happened to be something that I thought was really funny, and we tapped into that conversation that was trending. So those things that they happen organically, and they happen more often than you think. So it's just a matter of making yourself available and and jumping on those when they come up.
And I think Richard really said it perfectly on the side here. He says those quick tweets that we were talking about that are like on the spot, they're real, like not planned. And he says that I think people can pick up on that. So I think that's a really good point.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah. No, like it's something too that, you know, in a big, because I find it really interesting too, though, that you said like Ben, I know Catherine, you're the main social media for NHLPA, and Brian, who said you manage yourself. Ben, are there other people is there like a social media team at Foot Locker?
Yeah, so we have a social media manager for each brand that I mentioned. So there's 3 people who work under me that are the leads for each brand. But I've sort of taken on, I used to run all the accounts and strategy when I was at Showtime. So me and Bobby Kraus, who runs the Foot Locker social media, he'll kind of do the product stuff during the day and the more planned stuff. And then sort of at night when the NBA's on, because it's such a passion of mine, I'll sort of jump in with some kind of fill-in content at the after hours. So that's kind of.
But you're mostly like overseeing it, so you're not doing as much of like the postings as much as you used to. It's more like overseeing.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
I can give some insight into how we did things at Turner Sports too, because we had a team of about 15 of us actually on the social media team there. We had a senior director and a few managers under her. We divided it up kind of into analytics, sponsorships, and then I was on our content team that was actually, you know, covering NBA basketball from 7 till 2 in the morning. So that's kind of a little bit of how our structure was. And it really just depends on the brand and the team of how many people you have. And it's great to have those resources to constantly have someone's finger ready to go if something's going on.
No, that you're right about that for sure. That it's something I remember when I did World Juniors, I was on the social media team for the World Junior Hockey Championship when it was in Montreal and Toronto 2 years ago. So on Montreal, we had a team about 13, 14 people, and we had like 2 different game shift schedules, so we had like 7 people each. But it was amazing about like how much, you know, how effective it was with like a big team. You know, you had some people doing research, you had some people doing the posts. But yeah, no, but I think the norm now too is it depends on the organization, right? It depends on their style, depends what they want to do. Catherine, there are no like interns or anything? Like it's just literally just you?
So the NHLPA is a pretty lean operation. But it's not just me. We have my coworker, Ryan, he works in conjunction with me and the communications department. So his role is a bit of traditional media relations, but he also does a lot of our digital content and social media stuff as well. But I have a really unique job where I kind of liaise between all the different departments and know what messaging needs to be going out and fit that into our editorial schedule. So yeah, it's primarily me, but I do have some extra hands around the office.
So one of the last, things I want the last question I want to talk about, which I think is really important, is something that we've not necessarily as social media sports pros, a lot of people believe that they've conquered this. A lot of people will say they have, but it's how you transform social media content into sales. That is that is a big discussion. So one of the questions we had from Chris Knobloch, who was on the show when like third or fourth episode when I started it, asked about how do you make sure your social media sports campaign is unique, comprehensive, and innovative and supports sales efforts. So what do we think about that? I know there's a bunch of little questions in that one question, but Brian, do you think you can lead us to that? What do you think needs to be done in terms of making it? Because that's what you brought up when we were talking about, advice to students, right? You have to make sure you stand out because there's a lot of competition.
Yeah, I mean, our main driver obviously is ticket sales, selling tickets to the Globetrotters. The tough thing is on social media, you don't want to be too salesy. You don't want to be coming off as advertising to people all the time. The best type of content is going to be stuff that people want to engage with, not necessarily come buy tickets to tomorrow's game. So for me personally, my goals are more just growing our audiences, growing our fan base, and getting them engaged, because it's going to have a snowball effect. If you have a bigger social media following, if they're engaging with your content, hopefully that will drive back to ticket sales ultimately. But at least for my purposes, there's not as much of a direct tie. Maybe, Ben can probably speak more to trying to do that.
Yeah, so we're currently really working hard at being able to attribute sales from every post. We're not there yet. I don't know if the industry is there yet to being able to kind of, tie in linking to posts and tracking traffic and that sort of thing. I mean, you can see who clicked. For example, we put out a custom link for each pair of shoes, and you can see who's driving to the page to check out the shoes. But then that next step is the key step, is who is then converting and actually buying the shoes. So we're kind of making an overall database and looking at different vendor solutions and tools to kind of be able to figure that out. But something we are doing, and I also think is in the infancy, is social buying as a whole. So the days that Brian can say, buy, get tickets to tonight's game, buy here on Twitter, will be great. And I think the concerns there are sort of data and privacy concerns and what these different vendors can do with your information. But I think it's getting there. I mean, I think you're going to be able to buy one click on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram, and not through the ad platform, just through your organic handles pretty soon. And I think that's going to be a really interesting time for commerce as a whole.
Catherine, what do you think about this whole sales, social media discussion?
I agree with what Brian and Ben were saying. I'm obviously at the PA, my focus isn't on sales. We don't have a store, we don't have a shop. But what we pay attention to in terms of conversion is, did we change somebody's mind, or did we raise awareness? So if it's an event that we're hosting, we pay attention to how many people are talking about the event before, during, after. We measure how far that hashtag reached or that topic reached. And in terms of if it's, a controversial issue, a player was hit or made a bad hit or whatever the case might be. I mean, in 2013, the biggest thing was the lockout. So there are a number of issues that are constantly coming our way. So it's a matter of paying attention to the sentiment people feel. We use a variety of tools to track sentiment and conversation and reach, and making sure that the messaging that we steer fans in makes a difference. So that's our version of conversion.
I also think I've seen, I know the NBA now, I believe, has started doing stuff on Twitter where you can watch live now. And I think it takes you right to the League Pass game that you can watch on your phone, which is a pretty cool evolution of kind of, directly selling to people. I think they've been doing that on Twitter, which is pretty cool.
No, for sure. It's something we talked about. So I had Chris Yandel on the show twice, actually. He's Georgia Tech Athletics, and we had a show with him and Justin Karp from Pac-12 Networks and Jenny Hogan from Tagboard, and we were talking about kind of like a lot of these social media quote-unquote experts that all they do is post about numbers and SEO and all analytics, and there's not that much talk about engaging, creative, unique content, because one thing that Justin Karp said is engagement doesn't. He said something about engagement and reach, and about how if your content it comes out, like the content has to be there, then the analytics come afterwards, right? But I think, is there a problem where people are just so focused on like sales that they're kind of like they're not sure about the proper formula yet? Do you think maybe it has to do with that? Like it's kind of fuzzy and up in the air because it's so new.
Yeah, I mean, I'll speak a little bit to that. I do think they're still trying to connect those dots in terms of what is the value of a Facebook follower? What is the value of someone retweeting you? Because I think people and brands are starting to see that there's clearly a value in having those audiences. But even when I was at Turner, it was hard to directly tie ratings of a game to social media. And so it's still evolving. The industry is still evolving. I think it's moving more in that direction where you'll have, you'll be able to tie things together closely, but it is tough, and that's a challenge for any social media managers, kind of proving
even
that value.
Just to jump in, even when we're dealing with sponsors and a sponsor wants to pay a player for a sponsored tweet, how do you assign a dollar value to one player? Is it based on the amount of followers they have? Is it based on how active they are? Is it based on how engaged their audience is? So there's a lot of factors that go into it, and I think it's all experimentation until there's a formula that works for you. So I think when it's so new, everybody's just trying their best to figure out what works for them, and eventually there's enough knowledge out there that there is one mind about it.
So that's for you, Catherine. Like, but when players tweet stuff, like is like the NHLPA also almost like the social media publicist for players too, or do a lot of them just do their own thing?
A lot of
in terms of their own
publishing, the players take care of their own accounts for the most part. I think that's something that we always encourage, because the more authentic their tweets are, obviously, the more it connects to fans. I can only think of maybe a couple offhand that don't manage their own accounts, and it's not who you'd think. It's like the biggest guys out there, the top 5 on Twitter, all do their own. Very, very rarely is it not them behind the phone or the desktop.
No, but if someone, because I was just curious about the whole, like what you said, sponsor posts and NHLPA, because I was just curious, like a lot of players, it's up to them though, right? If they want, to hire someone to do their own social media, like, do they have to go through you guys? Like, how does that work?
They're
like say they wanted to, right? Like, are they free to do does NHLPA involved in that aspect at all?
We're involved if they want us to be involved. They're obviously free to do what they please. But whenever brands come to us wanting to work with players, or if a player wants help with something, if they come to us, we help them. And if they want to do it on their own, they're free to do that too. Some guys go through their agents, or they have their own businesses, and then that business has a social media team. So it just depends. Every player is different.
Okay, yeah, just Zach Boychuk is really, really good at social media. I don't know if you ever see his posts. He's a player who's playing in the AHL right now, but he follows back everyone, but he has almost 300,000 followers, which is pretty crazy. So
yeah. Oftentimes it's not the best players in the league that have the best followings. It's the ones that have the biggest personalities. It's the Scott Hartnells and the Paul Bissonnette when he played in the league.
Yeah, Bisnasty,
so it really varies, but it's usually it's a mix, but it's usually the players with the biggest personalities that do the best.
There's similarities to you too, Brian, because a lot of the players are starting to branch out on Twitter now too. Like, for example, Flip on the Globetrotters, he's really into it lately. He's really posting a lot, and seems to really like, because some people, Catherine, some players are really into it. Some players are not into it, right? Some players are afraid. It depends on, how they want to handle it. Right, Brian?
Yeah. So we were at Twitter's headquarters last week. So a lot of our players hadn't signed up on Twitter and joined it. So I think, even though the platform's been around, they're kind of like these kids with a new toy learning it now. But yeah, I mean, the cool thing with the Globetrotters is it's not your typical sports team. The players don't necessarily shy away from media or anything like that. They love the camera. They love getting out and talking to their fans, taking pictures. And that's what makes it a great brand to work with, is because it's not that typical team where, you're going to have a player upset about something said on social media. Those guys have a lot of fun with it. And I kind of just let them run with it.
And Ben, at Foot Locker, you're dealing with athletes as well. You're dealing with like basketball players as well, right? There's that link too. I'm sure content's created between that as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big part of my boss's job is working with the agents and the athletes that we get in our spots, and then from there getting them to kind of help us out on social. So we actually bake it into our deals with the athletes. So when we did a kids Foot Locker spot and a kids Foot Locker spot with Steph Curry. Actually, we did 2 spots with Steph Curry for a holiday and over the Thanksgiving time period. And we had, we're hoping for 2 tweets and an Instagram post in addition to your time on set. So that kind of thing. And a lot of the guys are great. I mean, Steph Curry has obviously, he works with Octagon, the agency, and they're super helpful with his stuff. And then other guys, James Harden is another one that we work with who is willing to chip in on social media. So yeah, working with the athletes is a big part of what we do. And obviously any campaign with an athlete tie-in does significantly better than any other campaign.
It's really cool to see, you know, at the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League too, players that, you know, are, you know, top prospects for national hockey league teams that just got drafted. And it's like, they're almost like, it's almost like two things. One, you know, they're getting ready on the ice to play, you know, in the big leagues, but they're also getting ready off the ice too with the social media. They're getting ready for all the craziness that's to come, right? Because draft year for all these players is, Catherine, the craziest year, because once their name is announced, boom, like the follow count is crazy. We had a lot of players too that went from 450 followers, and then as soon as their name was announced, like right after they got their jersey and went in the back to check their phone, they were at like 4,000.
Yeah.
So that I find that interesting too, right? Because they're like prospects. They're getting prepared for what's to come.
As much as they grow up with it at this age, all the players that are getting drafted have now grown up with social media. So it's a little bit of a different time in sports, but I think that it's still tricky because like you said, they go from 400 followers to 4,000 or 14,000, and all of a sudden you've got a lot more criticism, a lot more love coming at you too. And it sometimes can be overwhelming. And if you're not careful, you can get yourself into some hot water with that stuff.
Mm-hmm. Well, I just met Marco Estrada from the Blue Jays. The Blue Jays were in Ottawa a couple of nights ago for one of the hockey games, and I met Marco Estrada. I was talking to him because he's not on Twitter. He told me, man, I'm afraid to get Twitter. I don't want Twitter. I don't want social media. He was afraid. So and that's something I'm talking about in my next Sports Illustrated article too, about the players. There's a fear, right? But there's also a fear too from the brand's perspective, because the brands, like for example, Ben, Foot Locker, you know, Foot Locker has the main account that you were talking about before, has, you know, a couple million followers, right? One little thing, right? And because it's like the more followers, the more fragile it gets. One little thing that comes off controversial, that follower count is going to go down like really quickly, or not super, but like you'll lose followers, right? Like there's more people to please type thing, right?
I think it's more of a concern. It's not really of the followers. It's just of the business perception as a whole. I mean, Foot Locker is a multi-billion-dollar business. It's in many countries around the globe. It's not, one tweet can't be taken lightly. So it's really just about trust in your people. I mean, if you hire good, smart people that make good decisions, you're fine. It's all about who you give the keys to, because it can you know, a couple bad moves, it can be really bad, as we've seen. And it's easy. It's funny. A lot of times no one notices good social media per se across the organization, but they'll notice something bad really fast. And so that's what we try to avoid at all costs.
What's that saying? It takes years to build a reputation and a second to destroy it. Yeah.
And in our business, a second to get fired, because you see it so often.
Well, we saw it with the Houston Rockets, right? That was the big example that comes up a lot. And I know I just found out he got another job, so he's at least that was brutal, right? Like he literally getting fired over an emoji.
And he's also good, by the way. He was good.
Yeah, he was good. To
be frank, some of the other teams could maybe use someone with a little bit more personality, because they're so bland all the time. But then there's that risk, like, would you rather have the bland guy that stays in his lane, or the guy that has potential to go big but also make mistakes?
Yeah.
But it depends on the organization. Oh, yeah. Continue, Brian. Sorry.
I was just going to say, I felt like that was a kind of a constant battle when I was at NBA on TNT. I would want to do more edgy stuff. And I'll give you a good example. During the NBA Finals, it was game 2, I think, and Stephen Curry was like ice cold. He was playing terrible. And so I had our graphic designer create. I got a Where's Waldo picture, and I had her put Stephen Curry's face on Waldo, and his middle name is Wardell, and I tweeted out, "Where's Wardell?" with this graphic, which I thought was hilarious. I got an email from a higher up at Turner who wasn't a big fan of the tweet and told me to take it down. But the tweet literally got like 3,000 retweets within like 10 minutes. So it was a great tweet. But there is kind of that constant battle with trying to be clever, trying to be funny, trying to be edgy, with at the same time, not hurting your brands. I don't think I hurt the brand on that, but you've got to constantly be thinking about that.
Yeah, Catherine, you might have seen this because it made bar down, but we have a player in our league. He's not related to Evgeny, but we have a player named Vladimir Kuznetsov. He plays for Acadie Bathurst. And what ends up happening is we're a small league, so we're not able to use a lot of GIFs and a lot of memes from movies. I just basically use the photos we get. We have a limited amount of stuff. So a photo came up of the back of his jersey, right? So when you say Vladimir Kuznetsov, if you say it very quickly, it sounds like, cuz net's off, like cuz the net is off. So I basically tweeted out, why did the goal not count? And then the photo of the back of his jersey, cuz net's off, cuz the net is off. So I made a pun with his name, and it blew up, but there were a few people that, weren't a fan of it. So that's funny about the words, like the words Wardell, Brian. That made me laugh.
Yeah.
Thought it was kind of funny. But it's definitely,
it was one of my favorites.
It's definitely, it's tamed, but that's kind of like what they call keyboard warrior move, right? That's kind of like kind of to push the envelope a little bit, right?
But to me,
I think that's what
totally,
makes it
and
fun.
that does not, like, I would have, if they made me take that down, I'd be a little upset because like it did well. It doesn't. I mean, NBA on TNT, like Turner, they're not aligned with one team, and that's not vicious. I mean, it's in good nature. Like, I bet if Steph Curry saw it, he might not bat an eye. He might think it was funny. He might admit that it was true. He was off. So I don't think that's that bad. I like it.
Yeah, no, it was pretty funny. All right, so I think we're gonna wrap up this episode. I think we had a really good discussion. I hope you guys had a good time. I thank you all for coming on, and especially Catherine, who has to get up at 6 a.m. for Music City tomorrow. So, closing remarks, anything you guys want to say? Anything specifically we need to check out on social, Catherine?
Nothing specific, but definitely check out at NHLPA on Facebook and Twitter, and at NHLPA_official on Instagram over the course of the weekend. We're going to be doing some really fun stuff from Nashville for All-Star.
Yeah. By the way, that GoPro video that you guys put out with like the players,
those are so fun. I love.
They're amazing. They're some of my favorite videos.
Yeah.
That was like the second one I've seen, but then I realized there was a lot more of them. So I literally just spent yesterday morning just watching them all. I love those GoPro videos. I love GoPro so much.
Starting February 3rd, there will be one a week for 11 weeks. So you've got a lot more to look forward to.
I love GoPro, Ben Brian. Like, GoPro's awesome.
Yeah, we put them on we're trying to start putting them on the backboards so we can get cool footage of guys dunking and doing all that stuff. So GoPro is a great product and great brands. So that'll be really cool to see. The only thing I have to plug is follow the Harlem Globetrotters at Globies on Twitter. Got to get my Twitter followers up. It was a little low when I inherited it. So go follow the Globies.
Quick question, Catherine. Why isn't your handle the same across all the platforms? You can't get NHLPA on Instagram?
There's somebody that's squatting on that is doing nothing with it, and it's a constant struggle. We're working on it, but in the meantime, we've got almost 45,000 followers there, so we'll move it over once we finally get that handle.
Are they helping?
It's at NHLPA everywhere else.
Are they happy? Are they helping you, Instagram?
Yeah, but it's a little slow.
Okay. Yeah.
They're notoriously hard to get a hold of, so.
Yeah, it's slow. Someone had our Foot Locker Snapchat handle when we wanted to launch it, and it took us months. It was a hard battle.
We'll have to take this offline and figure out a solution for me here.
Yeah, no problem. We can.
But
I know.
very quickly, you mentioned Instagram very quickly, so I have to plug it. So I think I've told Catherine about this, but my sister and I made an account for our little Morky, our little dog Leo, and he has about 131,000 followers.
What?
That's amazing.
At little Leo the Morky.
Damn.
That it's. I think it's the screen's not. I don't think you can see it on the screen because it's kind of bright. But yeah, no, I think it's Instagram is something really really cool too. That like I think is gonna be you're gonna see like if they make a lot of changes to Twitter, like we talked about. I think Instagram will have an opportunity. Like it's all photos, right? I know for a fact, Catherine, a lot of players use Instagram the most. Like hockey players, that's their wheelhouse.
Yeah, I think they definitely use it. I think a lot of them use it and we don't know about it because they've got their accounts locked up and they like to stay connected with friends and family that way. A lot of them find it safer than Twitter to connect with their fans. So it really is a super fast platform that's growing among them.
Our players love Instagram. That's definitely their favorite.
Yeah, absolutely. Ben, closing remarks for you?
Yeah, this was a lot of fun. I really appreciate it. It was a good time talking to you guys, and I think you could do so many of these. I mean, we didn't get into Snapchat at all. We didn't get into when Instagram's owned by Facebook, so I hope we're all ready for when they kill our organic reach just like Facebook did, and what happens there. So that's the great thing about being in social, though, is it's always evolving. Our jobs are never boring. So I think it'll be interesting to see kind of where we go. I think this is the year of Snapchat. That's my predict. Like, I think this is the year that 35, 40, 45-year-old parents are getting on Snapchat like they did Facebook. So I think it'll be interesting to see how we all evolve from using Snapchat on like a event basis to using it day to day to communicate.
Absolutely. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in because it was a really interactive episode. So I'm really happy. Thanks for everyone that sent the questions live and also before, like in the last couple of weeks, we had a lot of questions. You could follow us on Twitter at Popternative, follow us on Facebook, and you can find replays of our show on our YouTube page as well. So thank you everyone and have a great night.
Thank you for tuning in to Popternative. Make sure to check out our past episodes of Popternative on YouTube. Be sure to like Popternative on Facebook and follow us on Twitter.